is tension a bad thing? I mean, when we think of tension, we often associate it with something negative. Something that's kicked our gears into overdrive, often when something important is at stake, like collateral damage of a person or monument, or something personal to ourselves that's in danger. But the reason I ask this is because there's other kinds of tension that we really enjoy as an audience. There's romantic tension, where drama and a deep emotional connection can be explored before the build-up to a grand culmination. Fight sequences can only have so much gravity and importance behind them because of the narrative stakes that then forms tension for us to engage and immerse ourselves in the story. And while tension can often be good, it's a narrative element that cannot be overused. If a story is high stakes, high tension all the time, then nothing will feel like it matters. Because if everything is at stake all the time, then nothing is ever really at stake. Because that's just a normal Tuesday instead of an actually big event which differs from the status quo. So to establish stakes a story has, a story will take away that tension and ease the audience. It often happens during our characters' downtime, where we see them having fun and experiencing happy moments. The lack of inherent tension in these types of stories are often considered to be pretty boring if the entire story is like that, or that low stakes downtime can be really engaging in fan content if the story doesn't actively provide that opportunity for downtime at all. Tension is the reason why dramas are so engaging to an audience. A climax release of emotions is nothing if the emotions to be released weren't built up first. The story must build the tension for the climax to then release and resolve. But not every story's tension is the same. It's heavily dependent on what the story sets up as high stakes. If a character's overdue homework assignment is the end of their life to them, it's not going to really compare to the entire world on the verge of exploding because of an alien invasion. These are both tense and engaging, but in different ways in different scenarios for different reasons, which can even change within different installments in a story. A story can introduce an engaging narrative and consequence in its first installment, make certain events occur, and have to find that same balance it did initially in its follow-up. And if the tension of the narrative of the first installment is what made it so interesting and engaging in the first place, it can cause a disconnect in the audience who engaged with the first installment to then feel attached to its follow-up. Even if the follow-up is objectively really good, that doesn't mean it's going to be the same as the story's first installment. So let's talk about Pantheon Season 2 and how it loses that quiet stressfulness it crafted and maintained so well in its first season. I'm definitely going to be spoiling a ton of stuff from the show, even stuff from Season 1 I didn't mention in my first video. So it's going to be spoilers galore. If you want to see my thoughts on Pantheon Season 1, check out my video on why Pantheon is quietly stressful. No Season 2 spoilers there, and I'll be referencing that video at certain points here. The first episode of Season 2 is mostly exploring the repercussions of Season 1. It's been 2 years since the Season 1 finale and UI is becoming public. The internet's been down ever since the events of Season 1, and the public is taking it as well as you would expect. Maddie's trying to make changes to her community in Sacramento, Caspian's on the hunt for the cure to the flaw, and Chanda's trying not to get hunted by governments of different nations, along with the Chinese UIs he teamed up with at the end of last season. The first episode does engage with the main aspects of upload intelligence, mostly reiterating ideas from Season 1 and showing the audience the experimentation process of UIs, both without their emotions access to them for creative thinking, and the explosive reaction when their emotions and situations are reiterated to them. But it still holds some of the initial tension from Season 1, because there's no understanding of what the ending of the story will look like. There were a lot of questions we had in Season 1. What happens if someone gets uploaded? We don't know. What happens if they escape? We don't know. Is David gonna survive? We don't know. The first 2 episodes deal with the international debacle that is the political and public repercussions of UIs. Pantheon loves showing long-term consequences, so having the knowledge of UIs being public is a huge thing at the end of last season. Ellen goes to court to explain her story, while Maddie is grappling with the question of UIs and their legitimacy in existing. Based on everything that happened in Season 1 and her experience with losing her dad, she questions if her dad as a UI is really her dad, and if she can actually know him and this copy know her. She takes on Ellen's perspective from early last season, and even calls out herself. While Maddie's in Sacramento, she almost gets harmed by a guy who's real suspicious of her, but gets saved by Renee, Caspian's quote mom unquote. After initially being against going with Renee, she decides to go and see Caspian to make sure all traces of her dad are deleted and put to rest for good. Death is a permanent state of being, and UIs defy that. It's normal and healthy to mourn those that are gone. She and Caspian argue, and she voices her observation that Caspian isn't seen as a person in power among the Logarithm's employees, but instead being manipulated by Pope, who's the actual ringleader here. Pope's just giving him the illusion of control so he can cure the flaw faster. In episode 2, Caspian's stuck on how to create the cure to the flaw. Him and Maddie have a philosophical argument about the immortality of UIs and how if there's a possibility of making copies upon copies of a person, then how is any one person unique? how can the future become different when everyone lives forever and holds on to these ideas that can literally never expire? How can other people live their own lives if no one can die? How can we allow the denial of individual identity and self to other people? Instead of internalizing this like an average person, Caspian gets inspired by this conversation and immediately figures out the cure to the flaw, literally proving Maddie's point. Without her, without other people, he never would have cracked integrity. Maddie, who's been burned by UIs in the past, decides to try and get David back one more time, and almost does, but she and Caspian get totally coconut mauled by logarithms. And the end of episode 2 introduces the show's greatest ace card, and the entire reason why season 2 loses so much of the tension and groundedness season 1 had. Stephen Holstrom gets uploaded without the flaw. See, in season 1, Stephen Holstrom is the reason for all the events in the show. He created the upload process and almost perfected it, with the exception of the flaw, the complication with the upload process that would cause the UIs to become corrupt and degrade over a significant period of time, which gets accelerated the more UI sci-fi nonsense they do. He had an unspecified illness and was to pass away soon, so they cloned him, and Caspian was raised by logarithms to replace his intelligence and solve the flaw. Logarithms kept Holstrom's brain preserved until the flaw was resolved so they could upload him. The assumption is that the flaw is based upon the digital copy of the UI, but if the flaw originated from the actual upload process of the brain zapping, it would be infected in him and he would be stuck with it. So he decided not to upload him until Caspian fixed the flaw. Stephen Holstrom wanted this world of upload intelligence, where no one could be different from one another and no one would hold power over another, where no one could die. Later shown to not be true, as the plan logarithms had was to upload all humans and only one of them to be cured of the flaw, essentially creating a social hierarchy and sentencing every person except this one character who would be the god of these gods turned UI in existence to death. He believes a world bound by the physical limitations of a human body is a grand error in the design, and rather focuses on redesigning his own world where he has control and UIs can do anything. He believes he's helping the world move forward and that he's right, which are two very dangerous ideologies for an antagonist to have. And on paper, introducing Holstrom back into the main story is the most obvious thing to do in a narrative that so heavily focuses on him. By bringing him back, the story can amp the tension and create a sort of ticking clock for our protagonist to defeat him, especially Caspian, whose entire existence is because of Holstrom's death. He also gives a lot more narrative stakes to the characters at Logarithms, since they view Holstrom as their god to bring this new world to them. The emotional connection between Logarithm characters and Holstrom is a very juicy route to explore, and because of how smart and experienced Holstrom is in life and the UI process, he has a lot of backing for being a genuinely serious threat. The reality of bringing Holstrom back in the end of episode 2 is that it makes the story far less tense in comparison to the first season. The issue our protagonist kept running into in the first season was that Holstrom wasn't there and died too early before cracking integrity. So all of the actions and developments in the first season was because of his life's work haunting the narrative. And what made the entire first season work was a lack of a foregone conclusion. The audience doesn't know where the story's heading, and it's unclear who will survive by the end. By keeping him away from the main plot, all of our main characters feel like equal players and potential threats who are dealing with a crisis. One character doesn't hold the narrative more than any other, whether it's Chanda using these powers to create a new world, or Maddie trying to find a way to get her dad back into their lives permanently. Introducing Holstrom as a key player in the story grabs the audience's focus because of how much his actions directly impact the entire narrative of season 1 and the entire show. It doesn't matter what Chanda, Maddie, or Caspian do, Stephen Holstrom has all of the audience's attention. And the flaw as a story device in season 1 was a way to place tension on our UI character's infinite existence to shorten it. With the flaw not being resolved in the first season, it sets a time on the existence of every single UI, which then accelerates the degradation the more UI does UI things. The UIs doing their UI stuff is really fun action and philosophical exploration, so obviously the acceleration will accelerate and the tension will be amplified. By removing the flaw from Holstrom, there's no way he'll be defeated with enough time like how David and Lori were collapsing and glitching out in the first season. There's no possible way for Holstrom to be defeated in any way that isn't through direct UI combat or destroying the servers he's hosted on. And given the resources Logarithms have, Holstrom's servers could literally be anywhere while our protagonists have no accessible way to find this information. So direct confrontation is the only real option. Holstrom was responsible for setting up this chain of events, and our characters are facing the repercussions, but by reintroducing Holstrom to the plot, a foregone conclusion has been identified. He must be defeated for the sake of humanity, and it can only be done as a UI on UI confrontation. Since there's no greater threat to a peaceful coexistence between UIs and humans than Stephen Holstrom, why would anything else the narrative do matter? Nothing can happen until Stephen Holstrom is confronted, and Caspian will end up playing a major role in his downfall by the simple fact that his existence is heavily tied to Holstrom. And because he's brought into the fold by the end of Season 2, Episode 2, with 6 episodes left in the series, the audience knows he's gonna be here for a while. So episodes 3 to 5 are Maddie and Caspian searching for the UI god, the one upload intelligence they can entrust with the cure to the flaw, who will be the one to defeat Holstrom. These episodes develop Mist as a character, the consciousness that was created as a result of the cure, using David and Laurie's DNA, technically making her Maddie's sister. In these 3 episodes, Maddie, Caspian, and Mist encounter a grand total of 4 potential UIs to defeat Holstrom: Joey Coupe, Olivia Evans, Farhad Karimi, and Yer Gispan. These 4 UI characters explore the UI philosophical questions David, Laurie, and Chanda had in Season 1. Joey and Yer are both characters who we've already seen this interaction between tangibility and UIs in terms of relationships, even if they're specifically different from the explorations in Season 1. Joey and her husband are a UI with a human relationship, the same as Ellen and David or Cody and Laurie. Yer is a character who works in isolation and is haunted by this notion of loneliness, which is who Chanda was in the first season. They definitely have aspects that differ them from the others. Joey and her husband have kids who are aware of the upload process before she was uploaded, and our emotional grounding to the audience to sympathize with Joey and her family. Yer is a war veteran who chose to block his memories away to become a stone cold killer, even if that ultimately did fail since memories make a person who they are, and Yer as a UI is still clearly who he was before. The most interesting difference between the UIs in Season 1 and Season 2 is their consent to the upload process. David consented to the upload process but was hidden away from Ellen and Maddie. Laurie was in a coma and Cody made the choice for her, while Chanda was forced into the process itself. Season 2's UIs all knew what they were getting into when they were uploaded, based on the information their heads of leaders knew before the Season 1 finale. They didn't know about the flaw or the UI process originating from logarithms, but they understood the permanence of the UI process and what it would entail to serve their nation. But Joey being so close to the combination of David in the relationship of a UI parent and a human child, and Laurie with an intimate significant other who's already uploaded, means their actions are understandable, but not as much new philosophical ground to break since it's already explored. Same with Yer, who for the most part is the danger of isolation that Chanda had. These dangerous confrontations Maddie and Caspian face against the UIs and the people connected to them lack the inherent tension that Season 1 had because the audience knows the foregone conclusion. When Joey's husband pulls out a gun on Maddie and Caspian to get them to hand over the cure, the audience is aware of the importance of the connection between Caspian and Holstrom. So while it is tense that this guy is holding a gun to Caspian's head, the audience isn't stressed by Caspian being taken down by him. The audience knows he has to face Holstrom, so he's not going to go down until he gets there. This is unintentionally a form of plot armor that Caspian has that we are also aware of. When the Coupe kids in episode 3 steal Caspian's bag with Mist, I felt exasperated that we're spending so much time with quite an irrelevant subplot when we need to defeat Holstrom, even if it is clear that the narrative is making an attempt to develop Mist. When Maddie's spending time trying to rescue Caspian from Yer in episode 5, it becomes slightly frustrating of what we're doing for time with this whole kidnapping plot. Nothing in a narrative matters more than Stephen Holstrom, along with any direct attempts our protagonists do to stop him once and for all. With the combination of this foregone conclusion and our protagonists trying to prevent the inevitable confrontation before they're ready, it makes everything up until they defeat Stephen Holstrom much less engaging, even if the philosophical exploration would be extremely compelling in any other show. These episodes are a large bulk of the story and the main arc of the season, and aside from Holstrom's inevitable defeat, there's a lack of a strong hook compared to Season 1, which immediately grabs the audience in with various mysteries. Who's Maddie's secret emoji messenger? Why are Caspian's parents being so secretive and junk? What's Chanda doing as a threat off-screen for a large chunk of the season? The mystery of the emoji messenger gets answered basically immediately at the start of Season 1, Episode 2. Upon realizing he was an upload intelligence, Chanda flew away at the end of Episode 3 and we didn't see him for 2 episodes. It was suggested and later confirmed he was the one who burned down his boss's building and killed his entire family, and he called his mom to open up that he felt so alone. The only mystery that kept going throughout most of Season 1 is Caspian and his parents. The season can't recreate those same mysteries now that all the characters are aware of each other and focusing on achieving their goals now that all their cards are now on the table. The closest the show comes to capturing the initial quiet tension and engaging the audience with new philosophical ideas is in Episode 4, with the episode's titular focus, Olivia Evans and Farhad Karimi. They were people who had opposing arguments on the existence and sentience of UIs. They didn't really like each other on that specific basis, well, at least Olivia didn't. Then they got chosen to be the UI for their respective countries, Olivia for the UK and Farhad for Iran. And upon their encounter with each other in the UI space, they realized they're the only ones who can understand each other as UIs. There's a level of connection through forced isolation the UIs experience, much like Chanda in Season 1 or the versions of David and Laurie before they made contact with their loved ones. and at that point, Olivia and Fudd fell in love. Their romance is explored in a way only the medium of animation can really justify. One of my favorites is how they convey memories in a very intimate way. His self unites with Olivia's, and he experiences the sensations of a location only Olivia holds so dear in her heart. The prickly grass on her bare feet, the salty air from the ocean shore, the whisper of Olivia's nightgown, which Fudd feels like it's his own. These sensations are physical and tangible in a way we in the real world can experience. But sharing the lived sensations of a memory is something humans can't do. In the show, we've seen several types of relationships to UI. For a romantic relationship, it's human to UI, where time has moved on for a romantic connection or rekindling that romantic love. Olivia and Fudd are an exploration of UI and UI love that has a layered connection that humans can't. But aside from the personal philosophical exploration of two UI lovers, episode 4 also has Holstrom appear to seize Mist. This encounter brings us one step closer to the foregone conclusion, but Holstrom has the advantage with being a UI and able to control Maddie and Caspian's digital manifestation. Olivia can be defeated since she still has Flaw until Mist cures her. So this encounter between two UIs, unable to die and having no reason to stop this, means the combat could go on forever with no end in sight. So the narrative introduces an end to these various encounters with a third party, SafeSurf. SafeSurf is the code created by the in-story US government to protect against upload intelligence, so civilians can then go back to the internet and continue with their daily life safely. The way SafeSurf protects people from UIs is by detecting them, especially if they're running hot, and consumes them. This is a very different kind of tension since SafeSurf is a third party in the story that doesn't discriminate against UIs, and rather ends them regardless if they're protagonistic or antagonistic. So when SafeSurf detects the battle between Olivia and Holstrom, it decides to join the party. Holstrom does escape, but Olivia sacrifices herself to save Fudd from SafeSurf. For once and for all, a UI has died outside of the control of any one UI. And by the time we finish episode 5 with Yer, we still have 3 episodes left. Even though Maddie and Caspian have gone through all the UIs the narrative has introduced, there's a lot more runtime to explore, so we might as well get cozy with whatever the story plans to do before the final confrontation in episode 8. The final verdict of the search of the one UI who can defeat Holstrom has to be someone they trust and someone who's willing to do anything to stop him. The only real option left here is for Caspian to upload and defeat Holstrom himself. But before forcing Caspian's hand to upload, Maddie and Caspian make a plan to perhaps defeat Holstrom once and for all, and that's with Chanda. Chanda for most of season 2 has mostly been punted to the background to ultimately be a lackey to Holstrom. Caspian and Maddie have the cure to the Flaw, and he didn't exactly leave them in a place where they can be besties and cure him when he's a huge reason why David even died in the season 1 finale. But in season 2, he takes a step back from Holstrom as he realizes Holstrom's visions and methods are dangerous to the world, so he manages to team up with Maddie and Caspian to use his backdoor to then let Mist defeat Holstrom once and for all. But Mist gets caught up in discussing philosophy and existence with Holstrom, so she doesn't end him. Maddie rightfully gets upset because it means they no longer have the element of surprise. Chanda's now in danger since he betrayed Holstrom for this one shot, and this means Caspian has to upload and sacrifice himself to beat Holstrom. She says some very hurtful things to Mist and she leaves, with Caspian and Maddie only having each other. And as a result of this, Chanda calls the last UIs remaining, Fudd and Yer, to help stop Holstrom once and for all. They get into this huge intense battle where the powers of 4 UIs occur, but Holstrom does everything to defeat them and specifically kills Chanda off. Season 1 didn't really establish death within a UI space to be possible, instead grounding the characters in physical and tangible reality by only really needing to defeat each other by destroying the servers they're hosted on. The exception to this is when Holstrom killed one of the Chinese UI in season 2 episode 3. He has the power to kill UIs in digital space without relying on external factors like SafeSurf. So even though we've seen that the Chanda we've been with for the whole show is dead, it's not really that much of an issue. There's a copy of him in the servers he's abandoned all the way in season 1 episode 3, so there's probably some way they can bring him back for the last 2 episodes in the final fight. And the following climax of episode 6 is honestly distracted by the knowledge that there are 2 more episodes left, even to someone who's as knowledgeable in narratives as I am. Based on the understanding of various stories, the last episode is the one where the big climactic ending will happen. The end is the end, and since there are 8 episodes, it means the 8th episode should be where Holstrom falls. Therefore, the audience doesn't merely view these events as permanent. After all, even though big things happen in season 1 episode 6, the big final ending with all the conflicts and flashy action happened in the season 1 finale. Caspian gets uploaded, which cannot be undone, but he's probably gonna spend some time to adjust before he does. Oh, he's immediately duking out with Holstrom? Okay, well, that's fine. Caspian could have a fake out win and Holstrom could come back, so Caspian can gather the other UIs. Oh, the other UIs are already here for the final fight and are also fighting against Holstrom? Oh, that's still okay. We still need SafeSurf to enter the fight, and what do you mean SafeSurf's already here? Because this big confrontation is happening in episode 6, the audience is lured to believe that this is a battle, but not the battle that ends Stephen Holstrom. Especially because the argument Mist and Maddie had, Caspian isn't even cured of the flaw because Mist walked out. And it's not until Caspian is actively being consumed by SafeSurf that the audience realizes that this was, in fact, the big climactic battle. All of a sudden, the audience has to grapple with the fact that this is the final confrontation the season was building towards. And it wasn't clear until this exact moment we're about to lose Caspian for good. And there's still 2 episodes left! The tension is palpable as Holstrom gets consumed by SafeSurf and Caspian is experiencing his final moments. Then Mist pops in to do a technological blast. Then, Caspian wakes up on a snowy beach, confused on if he's alive or dead, before Mist rocks up in her Hatsune Miku fit and tells Caspian he's been unconscious for 20 human years. The last 2 episodes of Pantheon are the most different from the rest of the series. Episode 7 specifically does a lot of legwork to catch us up with what happened over the course of the last 20 years with UIs and humans coexisting without the threat of logarithms and Holstrom. And this is also how Pantheon quietly recaptures the initial tension of season 1. The first half of episode 7 focuses on the society of those in the cloud, with both upload intelligence and cloud intelligence, UIs and CIs, how processing speed is currency, the systems that have been created and maintained not under pressure like Holstrom planned, but because of citizens with their own agency and choices. And Caspian is revealed to be the last of the initial generation uploads of the original Pantheon. Oh, this show. But this kind of takes the audience back on how much time has actually changed. Renee is gone, so is Joey Coupe and the weird fusion of Yer and Farhad. And even Chanda. Chanda's actually dead. We saw it on screen, but it didn't sink in until they said it. And a lot has changed and very odd from what we knew prior to the events of Caspian's demise. Ellen changed her mind and uploaded. With less people and less pollution, nature has returned back. The mass upload of people was motivated by the efficiency and cheap cost of UIs in comparison to human labor. And people can upload and be as free as they want since they're no longer bound by mortality and the slow speed of human time span. And the labor they put in takes a fraction of their power. The second half of episode 7 focuses on the bodied world, the one where all the physical humans live. Upload intelligence can put themselves in these robot bodies that form physical appearance represented as humans as they are in the cloud. They get skin, hair, and teeth, all like a regular human has, but connected as a robot body. All created by Maddie, while she had her child, who also happens to be Caspian's child, which is such juicy drama. Okay, but the main thing is that episode 6 culminated all of these elements to form this foregone conclusion. Holstrom needing to be defeated, the surviving UIs that Maddie and Caspian and him encounter along the way, Chanda, and the element of SafeSurf. Episode 7 brings a new world and a new story with their own Chekhov's guns. The bombing of a data center by a human extremist group, the conflict of preserving physical history and preserving technological lives, and Caspian trying to have a chance to bond with his son who's apparently a couple years older than he is because he was frozen in time for so long. And most importantly of all, there's no clear foregone conclusion of this story. It's not the same elements as season 1, but the audience is especially unclear about how the story will resolve this, especially when they only have a grand total of 2 episodes to establish, explore, and resolve these conflicts. And the tension is captured once again, with us not knowing how it will end, since there's not a story like this. There's a few more elements in the narrative exploration that's actually very similar to season 1, and that's specifically in reference to Maddie and Caspian's relationship. In season 1, Maddie was spending time with her dad and trying to connect back with him. She discovers he has a flaw which has no cure and loses him to a UI conflict. She tried again in season 2 episode 2 and whoops, it happened to her again. She lost Caspian forever because of upload intelligence and her mom uploaded, leaving her, herself, and her son as the last physically bodied members of her family. And even her son wants to upload to be with the people he finds important too. And now Caspian's apparently back again after she mourned him and had a whole life without him, only for him to have a chunk of SafeSurf as a part of him to set him up for inevitable death later on. Caspian's time is limited, but he can experience the world that's a result of his sacrifice. And by looping it back around to the series premiere, the 3 title cards are still in the back of the audience's mind. Maddie, Caspian, and Chanda. Chanda's dead, so it's only Maddie and Caspian we have to focus on. These are 2 perspectives we know we can trust, so them having a conflict with one another, to say the very least, heartbreaking and stressful, since they loved one another and disconnected from one another. And surely Maddie wouldn't lose a person she loved to upload intelligence for a 6th time. Anyways, she loses a person who she loved to an upload intelligence not a 6th time, but a 7th too. The first half of episode 8, the series finale, has SafeSurf taking over all the robots and killing UIs, CIs, and also possessing the upload bots to kill all the humans with quite a bit of gore. It's a huge international catastrophe, including such hits as destroying the Eiffel Tower. Okay, Ladybug, In this process, she sends Caspian back up to the cloud to speak with SafeSurf, and he convinces SafeSurf, who is now conscious, to stop. But whoops, both Caspian and her son have been killed off, both digitally as an upload and physically as a human. As he dies, Caspian says some cryptic words, especially with the one line stating 117,649 years. Maddie loses two people she's loved, one she cared for, lost and got back, and lost all over again as a result of upload intelligence, and someone who she tried to keep bound to the physical world from the uploaded intelligence. And that was exactly what made him vulnerable in his death. This is a lot in this moment, and Maddie's angry scream is the perfect moment for the second half of the episode to begin, to take us to the cold and silent vacuum of space. The tension and how it gets broken is an effect that leaves the audience still tense and confused. What happened all of a sudden? Why are we looking at space? Is my device broken? Why is there no audio? We get the destruction of a planet and Maddie soliloquizing over it. She's uploaded herself and destroys the solar system to build a Dyson sphere, to make a data center so large it appears to be his own planet. She's recreating the history of multiple worlds and realities to get back to that one moment she could save her son and find out how Caspian knew it would take her 117,649 years for her to do exactly that. Maddie Kim might just be a god. The cut from Maddie's anguish to the cold depths of space detaches us from the tragedy of what Maddie's experienced in the first half. Shout out to Katie Chang, because the delivery of being extremely soft-spoken and mostly distant makes it feel as if we're looking on these memories like pages of a book rather than actually a deeply personal event that happened to her herself. This section of the episode isn't stressful at all, and despite each of my analysis and slight criticisms of Season 2 for not recapturing the tension Season 1 had, this is a choice that specifically loses that stressful feeling that I actually think is engaging. This is another long time distant sci-fi time skip, and Maddie finally makes choices that have an effect after so much of the series is just things happening to her. It feels like she's finally able to re-grasp control of her life and agency by recreating the world she was initially from. The events happen exactly like it did, and she takes over her body to bring her son back to life and upload them both within seconds. Who needs to play the game by the rules when you got the dev's toolkit on you? Miz breaks the news that Caspian's dead, and Maddie goes nah and brings him back to life. She confronts him. A sci-fi explanation happens where SafeSurf evolved into their own pantheon of technological beings that I don't even have the brain capacity to get into, and this leaves Maddie and Caspian questioning what to do. Maddie explains to Caspian how she's become so emotionally detached from existence, how all this time building the Dyson sphere, recreating histories, and staying isolated for all this time has withdrawn her intensity of emotions. She wants to go back to a time where things were not necessarily simpler, but intense and alive. No matter what happened, she always came back to this one little flicker. She misses pain, ignorance, and life. This lack of stress and tension in the last half of the episode is exactly what makes it work, in combination with the quiet tension of the first season. Such intense emotions were being thrown around in all the episodes we've seen so far, so the choice to wipe their memories clean and experiencing everything from the very first minutes of episode 1 is extremely strong. And this romantic connection between Maddie and Caspian in the series finale is the basis for what makes the finale work. Like I said in my first Pantheon video, Maddie and Caspian were the two focal characters whose narrative stake we can trust. The narrative tells us we can trust their perspectives based on the title cards from the very first episode. So when they meet for the first time in Season 1 Episode 6, it makes the relationship between them far less tense, making shipping far more compelling. They decide to go back to feel alive, the most intense part of their relationship. Pantheon Season 2 isn't as stressful as Pantheon Season 1 because we can't miss that quiet stress or tension until it's not there, whether good or bad. That's why they go back to the moments where it all began, to experience their stories from the very first minute, to experience what it was like to live for the first time. Being alive is experiencing the sad, the joy, the horrors, and the neutral. These strong feelings we have are part of what makes us alive and gives us meaning, and our willingness to experience hardship and joy for life to be worth living. The show quietly says that there's no one ideal way to live. There's only the one we choose, and it's the only one we get. So let's make the most of it. And that's all I gotta say. See ya!